Hello everyone, how y'all doing? So I wanted to make another follow-up just because I kind of wanted to propose this sort of topic where, ever since this whole, 30 days validation period for PlayStation has sort of been making the rounds on the internet, I sort of decided to think about the supposed resurrection of the C-bomb. Now, to give you a little bit of a clarification as far as like what the C-bomb issue is. So back in 2021, I believe, I think it was 2021. I don't think it was 2022, but there was an issue that people discovered where people realized that if your PlayStation 3 and 4, I don't think this affected the PS5, I think this was mainly the PS3 and 4. If you remove the C bomb, or if the C bomb eventually stopped working, which this is going to happen at some point, like as far as like how long it'll take, we don't really know, but like C bombs, they eventually do fail, and that's not even really the worst scenario in the world because if the C bomb stops working, you can usually replace that. The only problem is what people had discovered back then is that if the C bomb eventually stops working, even if you replace it with a different one, the PlayStation will have a hard time verifying the trophy data, and that ended up causing games to just not be able to launch at all. And what made this extremely problematic is the fact that this wasn't just affecting digital games, this was also affecting physical games. So even if you have a physical game that you didn't buy from the PlayStation Store or anything like that, you still weren't able to launch them. You needed to connect to the internet in order to set the date time based on the online, just because with CMOS battery, I hope I've been saying CMOS and not C-bomb throughout the entire video, but anyway, with the CMOS battery, usually one of the main functionalities that thing offers is that it's sort of able to serve as like an internal clock. And so if that thing fails, then the only way the PlayStation is able to verify the date is through the internet. It's by connected to the internet. And even if you tried replacing the CMOS battery, it was still unable to. I mean, it would probably be able to reinitiate the functionality of the internal clock, but it would still have issues verifying the trophy data just because the console was designed in a way where it just ended up corrupting that data in some way or another. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. It's such a weird issue. But regardless, it meant that regardless if you bought digital or physical games, you were unable to play your games unless you were connected to the internet. And then there was the issue where, hey, if PlayStation servers eventually shut down, then how are we gonna be able to play these games? It was a case where, hey, the longevity of PlayStation devices were at risk. Now, eventually, PlayStation did actually patch this issue. So nowadays, if you do remove the CMOS battery, you are able to play games, digital or physically. But honestly, I think the main concern was physical games. But anyway, you are able to play games. It's just that the trophy data will not be properly synced with the date. And honestly, if the only compromise that we have to deal with is just the trophy data being kind of messed up, I think anyone can accept that compromise. Like, I can live without trophies. I cannot live without being able to play the games that I bought. But anyway, as for this issue where people have realized that ever since PlayStation introduced this new sort of DRM, if you remove the CMOS battery, then you aren't really able to launch the game. Now, of course, in this case in specific, it's more so digital games. Physical copies are not really affected by this. But still, if you remove the CMOS battery, you aren't really able to launch the game without verifying the data in time. And so in this case, do I think that PlayStation is going to fix it the same way they did back in 2021? The answer to that is no. I don't think they will. And to be completely honest with you, in this case, I actually am kind of, well, I don't know if I'd say I'm on their side, but I would certainly say that I don't think they have the same amount of obligations as they had before. Because in the past, the issue with the CMOS battery was something that was affecting every copy. And it wasn't really something where, there was a fix for it. It's like if the servers get shut down, you have absolutely no way of verifying. I mean, I guess it was verifying the trophy data. I'm not entirely sure, but regardless, if you weren't connected to your internet and your CMOS battery was dead, then it was pretty much over. You just couldn't use the console to play any games at all. But in this case, this DRM that exists, in theory, based on the most recent information that we've got, it basically works in a way where it's mainly meant to protect the games that would be within the 14-day refund period. And so realistically, after these 14 days pass, then the game that you have installed on your console should be able to have the same perpetual license as other games that you've purchased in the past. And that's why, people have only really started noticing this with games that have been purchased within the past couple of weeks. Meanwhile, if you look at games that were purchased before people started noticing this, those games aren't really affected. And based on what some people have noticed, where they bought a game on the 14th of April, and every game that they bought before the 14th of April compared to games that were bought after the 14th of April, which would have been 14 days ago, they've noticed that, yeah, there does seem to be a correlation where one game I don't really need to have this validation period, or at the very least, I guess it would be more accurate to say it doesn't exist in the first place. Meanwhile, games that were purchased, in less than 14 days, they start having this validation period. And so what people have concluded is that, in theory, after those 14 days have passed, if you're able to connect to the internet, you should be able to have the same perpetual license as people are used to having. And so if that's the case, then realistically, you don't really have a major issue, because if it's only within 14 days, I don't think that's a major problem. And I feel like, for PlayStation to fix this issue, I feel like this would only be affecting a very specific scenario. Or, okay, I can only think of two scenarios where I think people can be negatively affected by this. So the first scenario would be if you bought a game, like, I don't know, let's say you bought Code Vein, and you bought it right before PlayStation announced, or no, it would probably be a little bit after, but you bought it right before PlayStation would shut down the servers. Like, let's say you bought the game on the 14th of April, and then PlayStation is going to shut down the service in the 27th of April. So that would be less than 14 days. So in that scenario, then technically speaking, once the PlayStation servers are shut down, then maybe you wouldn't be able to verify the license because the servers are shut down. And yeah, I guess in that scenario, you wouldn't really be able to play the game after the 30-day validation period, as well as the fact that if the CMOS battery stops working, then you can't really play the game at all, even within those 30 days. And the only issue with this scenario is that, first of all, if you buy a game right before PlayStation servers are about to shut down, I think you're kind of an idiot. Like, I'm just being completely honest with you. Like, if you know that these servers are going to get shut down, why would you buy any game from PlayStation? Like, they're no longer going to support this platform, and so why would you buy any game at all? Like, I personally, I find that to be kind of idiotic. But even then, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, even in this scenario, I don't know if this would actually affect people, because normally when PlayStation announces that they're no longer going to be supporting certain platforms, they don't completely disable all online functionality to that platform. For example, back then when they announced that the PlayStation 3 would reach end of life back in 2021, they did say that, like, after that date, you would still be able to download your games. Now, obviously, that's not going to be forever. At some point, even that feature is going to eventually dissipate. It's eventually going to run away. But, there did seem to be some period of time where you were able to download games that you bought from the PlayStation Store. You just simply couldn't buy new games, as well as most likely also, gain access to a lot of the PlayStation Network features. But the thing is, if you're still able to download games, then that means that you are still connected to some server, some PlayStation servers, and so they're not going to just completely shut down. And if that's the case, then whatever servers are still up, they're most likely going to be enough to verify that you bought that game within those 14-day period. And so even if they shut down like a day before the 14 days pass, I'm fairly certain you're still going to be able to verify that you did buy that game, and afterwards it will be converted into a perpetual license. And so I don't think people in those scenarios would be majorly affected. And even then, like again, like I said, like why the hell are you buying games right before they announce that they're gonna end support for certain platforms? Like you're a bit of a dum dum if you do that. But anyway, that's one scenario where I don't think people would be actually affected by it. The other one would be, and this one is a extremely niche one that like I feel like it's very unrealistic, but it's a scenario where, you know, let's say I buy Code Vein today. I bought the game. You know, the servers are not gonna get shut down. I don't technically have any internet issues in my current house, but then the next day I'm gonna go on a, I don't know, 2 to 3 month vacation where I'm gonna camp in the mountains, and there's absolutely no internet. Now, this scenario though, I feel like is very goofy, and I really don't think a lot of people are gonna be in this scenario. Like, first of all, 3 month vacation. I wish I had 3 months of vacation. But also, like camping in the mountain is like to what extent are you not able to connect to the internet? Like, if you're telling me that there's no Wi-Fi, like wherever, like I mean, technically speaking, if I'm camping in the mountains, like I'm like actual like traditional camping, it's like where am I even gonna connect my PS5? Like, am I just gonna connect? Like, where am I even gonna connect this? How am I gonna play this? Is like, but let's say for example, I'm staying in some like I don't know hotel, like some place like Airbnb. I don't know, like some type of like house that has a bed and also has like power sockets where I can connect my PS5 and my TV. Like, and you know, in this scenario, I took the PS5 from my house in order to play games in the mountains. It's like, okay, sure, but like even in that scenario, it's like, is there really no internet? Like, absolutely no internet? It's like, because if my phone is able to connect to the internet in some way, it's like, can't I just turn on hotspot and then temporarily connect the thing to the internet just so you can verify the license? Because at the end of the day, if all I have to do is just one online check, then like, I don't even need to have good internet. It just has to be like, it can be potato, like terrible internet, but like if it's only to do like a simple online check, then it's like, is it really impossible for you to do that? I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, normally I'm not one of those people who say like, "Oh, come on, everyone has the internet, so who cares?" You know, if something has online dependency. I'm usually not one of those people, just because you know the argument that I've always had is it's not about whether or not people have the internet. It's about whether or not the platforms are still going to be able to support online functionalities after some point. But in this scenario that I created, it's not really about whether or not the platform is supporting the thing, it's supporting the online functionality. It's really more about whether or not I have access to the internet. And, you know, I feel like this scenario of like mountains and stuff, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's a very obscure scenario. Like, I'm thinking to myself, are the engineers at PlayStation who developed this DRM in order to prevent people that were abusing the refund system, where they would ask for a refund of a game that would technically be eligible, but they were able to install that game onto the console. And because of the fact that when you install games on the PlayStation and it's set as primary, it's able to have a perpetual license where it doesn't even need to verify if you actually own that game or not. It's just installed there for an indefinite amount of time, meaning that people were able to abuse this system just to get their money back while they still have the games. Like, if they're trying to protect their platform from people that do that, I'm thinking to myself, are they really going to reverse this thing just because there are some people that are going to camp for 3 months right before, like right after they bought a game, and they're not going to be able to validate the purchase within those 30 days? Like, are they really going to, you know, create some kind of patch to address this specific group of people that I don't think would actually apply to most people? I don't know. Again, I feel like these are very niche scenarios that I don't personally think PlayStation would even bother. I'm just being completely honest with you. And you know, even as someone who's very like critical of these companies as far as like how much they tend to expect people to depend on their online service, even I'm gonna say, yeah, I don't really expect them to do that. I'm gonna be honest. But with that said, I do still personally think you shouldn't buy digital games, because even if this scenario wasn't as problematic as we thought it was, I mean, personally speaking, I didn't even really care. Like, to me, I think that buying digital games at all is still a problem because I still personally believe that at some point the console is going to ask you to verify if you own that game or not. Like, it can happen if the console gets corrupted or if you do a factory reset or anything like that. Like, I feel like your console will always have a ticking time bomb where it will ask to verify your ownership of the game. And so I do personally think that even if this scenario, even if this, this quote unquote resurrected C bomb issue isn't as bad as we thought it was, I still personally think you shouldn't buy digital games. Like, I'm just being honest with you. But anyway, I think that's really all I wanted to share.